welcome all. It's my great honour this evening to introduce the Honourable Dr. Matthew Prempeh, who is the current serving Minister of Energy, Republic of Ghana, and was the former Minister of Education. And I think Matthew's reputation in educational reform and the enormous effort at achieving the hugely successful indicators that Ghana shows on its pathway to human development, particularly with education as an indicator itself, is known to many people. And I spent a bit of time at Harvard and was envious to learn that Matthew was there. I spoke to Matthew and was envious to learn that he has relationships with the other place that will not be mentioned in Oxford. So having him in Oxford, I feel is a great coup, and we might be able to finally woo him away from institutions like Harvard and elsewhere. Maybe not, but it's great. It's great to have Matthew here. His talk tonight is on, well, human wastage to human flourishing, the role of education reform in Ghana. And I think Matthew has a treat in store for us, and a lot of it will be based not only on just over the last few days. We've spent a lot of time with him, and really just the sheer weight and enormous insight into being a central cog in an African country that has huge ambition and huge aspiration, and how one turns that kind of ambition and vision into aspiration into practical mechanisms for the delivery of policy options and of policy priorities. I think Matthew will talk about some of these things this evening. Matthew, just for your information, in terms of the audience, a number of students here from the Master of Science in Comparative and International Education in the Department of Education, a few doctoral students in Oxford, Peter at the back, who himself has quite a substantial background in questions of aid and development, and has been part of an enormous sort of infrastructure in development. And Peter, I think, will join us for dinner, so a chance to talk more about things. Tom there, who's brought some of our students across in the department and working on doctoral studies, and Alia, there's a new lecturer in comparative education. Who's ably been doing things I've been struggling with for many years, who also has, unfortunately, a history at the other place. Desperately pleased to have with us, and for 2 months just coming, who of course is also a doctoral student interested in systems theory. So you have an interested audience who I imagine will be quite engaged tonight, and really look forward to hearing what you have to say. The Honourable Matthew.
Thank you, Paul. People would ask, what is my background? I studied medicine, practiced medicine in this country. And at a point, I decided, just when I finished my membership of the Royal College of Surgeons, I decided to go home and do politics instead of doing postgraduate training. Why? Because I felt as a doctor, you treat individual patients, and if you are that good and you can migrate successfully to politics, your policies may have even a more bigger impact on the population than as a doctor. So I hoped and I wished when I went into politics, I'll be confronted with those things that will make an impact on everybody's life. And one of them successfully probably was education when I was trusted. I have no expertise or background in education apart from the work I did as a minister. So I gather most of you in this auditorium have more knowledge about all the articles and the journals and things. That is not why I'm here. I'm here to demonstrate that effective leadership and good policy implemented well will have a tremendous impact from human wastage to human flourishing. My party's manifesto, when I was told that I was going to become Minister of Education, I was confronted with finding out what was there. So not only by handing over notes from the previous minister, but really dig in to find out some of the problems that we were having. One of the biggest problems in education all over the world is the tenure of education ministers in their ability to hold a policy and implement it fully. Most education ministers stay in office for less than 2 years. And I wonder in that time, what can be done? I was fortunate to have served 4 years. So the political parties, like everywhere else, had turned education into a football or let's say a football match. Everybody wants to come up with different policy, supposedly to help, but whether it helps or not, we can't. I got into the ministry and nowhere did anybody talk about learning outcomes. There was nowhere in the ministry that there was any data on learning outcomes. Even though international studies done had shown that at a particular point we were on the last on TIMSS, and then we decided to run away and said we won't do TIMSS again. Decision making was ad hoc, really, in the ministry that I ended up with. There was no accountability, no agency. It's like anything goes, whether the students write exams or not. The poor learning outcomes, like I said, in 2015, the National Education Assessment, 25% of all primary 6 pupils failed in English and maths. World Bank Human Capital Index had shown recently that Ghana ranked probably second to last, even though we are very good. Yeah? When the studies were actually done, realized that Ghana was not helping itself. Africa Facing Forward showed, World Bank report showed that of 12 years of education, classroom education, the benefit was probably only 5.7 years. So we had over 6 years of wasted time. In PISA, in 2015, we ranked last, and that was the last time we said we were going to participate in PISA anyway. So we caught a ball and ran away. In the West Africa countries that do a common exam called WASI, a school certificate for 5 West African countries, the pass rate averaged 25% between 2012 and 2017. And that was the qualifying exams into tertiary education. The other issues we faced, like I said, access in pre-tertiary was bad, inadequate fiscal infrastructure, outdated curriculum for the schools. The curriculum had been in existence for, I think, about 15 years before we got there. Lack of professionalization with the teacher corps, like I said. In the technical and vocational education sector, it was 19 ministries. Everybody had his own technical and vocational institute. No coordination, no collaboration, no standardization, and actually no certification if you went through any of our TVET centers. So getting into that in 2017, my party had put together eminent educationists like yourselves. And they had decided that there were things we needed to do. And it manifested itself in 45 promises under the theme Creating Prosperity and Equal Opportunity for All. Very, very similar to human flourishing. My party felt that for the country to prosper, for the individuals to prosper, there was a need for us to look at education and look at it very, very well. I felt that looking at the 45 promises, we could structure it into 5 areas. And I believe sincerely that systems-wide approach, we cannot tackle individual any of them and ensure that we delivering quality education. To deliver quality education, you have to do all five, or at least all five must be working. The teachers must be of high quality. The curriculum must be modern with an effective assessment to boot. High quality teaching and learning resources, effective school leadership and management, and high aspiration and high standards for everybody. In teacher education level, we did a new curriculum framework. In fact, DFID was working in a program in the country called TETL, Transforming Teacher Education and Learning. And they had come up with the national teaching standards, was to move teacher qualification from diploma to degree, a 4-year degree for a 2-year teacher training colleges to a 4-year teacher training colleges, leading to an award of Bachelors of Education. I topped it up with instituting a licensure program for all teachers, especially when they come fresh into education, and an assessment framework developed for that. We also started doing teacher portfolios as the basis of the assessments whilst the teachers are in the classroom. This we did together with the unions, actually, and TETL. And we based it on the 9 areas that UNESCO had come as forming a comprehensive teacher policy. If you want to have a comprehensive teacher policy, you must address all those 9 issues, from teacher recruitment to school governance. And we came up finally with a program supported by UNESCO that we got a comprehensive teacher policy. For the first time in about 10 years, we ended up giving the teachers the conditions of service based on a policy that we negotiated. On the modern curriculum, together with Cambridge assessments, we developed a new curriculum, which is an objective-based curriculum, where what we're doing was saying that at every year, a child must be competent in doing certain things or must have the knowledge and demonstrate that knowledge in doing certain things. That's the objective-based curriculum. We did an assessment, and we decided to implement a national assessment framework at year 2, year 4, year 6, and year 10. We also introduced for junior secondary school a curriculum. High quality teaching and learning resource materials. Together with Cambridge, we developed textbooks and teaching and learning materials for all the various levels based upon the new curriculum and new things that we have done to support education. Effective school leadership. The Ghana Education Service, which is the real implementer of education, had lost its focus. It had become a human resource organization, just employing teachers and attempting to deploy them whether they go or they not. Because it was centrally, we realized that most teachers were being deployed in the areas for which they were abandoned teachers. And for a vast majority of Ghana, that were lacking teachers. They just employed without knowing where the teachers went. There was a cluster of schools, 8 cluster of schools I visited. And we did a head count. All the 8 schools were from kindergarten to junior high school, about 9 years of schooling. And the total number of students in those 8 cluster of schools, or that cluster that had 8 schools, were 321. But every school had a full complement of staff, plus some we didn't know where even though they collected their salary. So we wanted to change the whole focus of Ghana Education Service from a human resource organization, because they had the largest government payroll, to become a learning organization. So the first thing we did was to create a whole new directorate called School Leadership and Management, because what we're finding is that out of the 30,000 schools that operated at Ghana Education Service, everybody became a headmaster just by the number of years you have stayed. No training, no capacity building, nothing. So an English teacher became a headmaster. A French teacher became a headmaster. As to the skills and competencies needed to be effective as school leader, it never existed. So we created that one. We worked with DFID again, with a collaboration with some universities in UK, started school leadership and management training. So we had a 2-track system for a teacher. You either stayed in the classroom to grow to become a consultant teacher, or you go on the trajectory of school leadership and management. And so the highest paid teacher was not necessarily going to become, or was going to become the head teacher, is the consultant teacher. We brought in a new school inspection and supervision system. We had about 1,840 second supervisors all over the country for different parts of the country. We bought motorbikes for every one of them, including tablets that all had all the inspection curricula and framework all on that tablet, so that when they get to the school, they don't leave anything elsewhere. Everything was computerized for them. We also realized that the regulatory framework was very weak, so we were able to pass through Parliament 15 of 21 identified legislative pieces. Then we did a 5-year strategic plan for technical and vocational education and training, brought all the various technical educational training institutions in the country from the 19 different ministries to an education service, or for that matter, the Ministry of Education, and passed a new law to regulate them. So we created a service, technical vocational education training service, and a Ghana education service for general education. So in so doing, we expanded also very much access to technical and vocational education by building new ones, rehabilitating, and developing a competency-based training curricula for the 26 trades and for others in the country. Then we did tertiary education reforms, because we realized that educational reforms were going to lead to more students going through to universities. So we needed to create more universities, which we did. We created about 5 new universities, gave the first of its kind national university. We couldn't finish with the public university bill before we left, but the whole bill was for governance and accountability among tertiary institutions. We created a National Research Fund Act and also started converting some polytechnics to technical universities, which I regret actually. So basically what we're trying to do in the 4 years was radically transform everything about education in the country, from kindergarten to university, including general education and technical and vocational education, which by and large successful. But we use one as an example. Because when we got into office, we realized that since 2005, there has been gender parity in basic schools. Education for All 2020, Ghana passed 5 of the 6 outcomes, and one was gender parity. We realized that because we introduced school feeding, even in basic schools, capitation grant for every child, people went to school. They went to school. But between the junior high school from 50 years to the senior high school, the drop rate was about 40%. So there was a huge debate among the political parties, where my party said, when we come, we will introduce free secondary education. Of course, the president said that America was one of the other side of the pond. It was one of the first countries in the world that made secondary education compulsory, because at the dawn of the industrial era, they needed people with the capacity and the competence and the skills to be able to be employed in industry. So they made secondary education compulsory in America. And that if we want to develop as a country, there's a need for us to look at that. And of course, like I said, the indicators are that the ladies were dropping out, and most people who are poor couldn't get into secondary education. In Ghana, secondary education is boarding education. Ghana, secondary education is boarding. So whether poor or rich, you have to take your child to a boarding secondary school. Of course, why? We had only, even up to now, we have only 722 secondary schools. We have about 15,000 junior high schools. So the junior high schools were really in the communities where everybody could walk to. But the secondary schools happen to be scattered in a very bad way when you look at the geography. Most of our secondary schools, especially the good ones, were in the southern part of the country. So people had why. But it did some fantastic things to us, because previously it was 7 years. So you had to travel to go and live amongst people from all different parts of Ghana, different cultures, different languages, and you stayed in boarding school for 7 years. For integration purposes, for socialization purposes, it did wonderfully well for us. But then it became very elitist because only few people could afford. So they did some reforms in the early 80s, and they split secondary school education into junior high school, which is community-based, and senior high school, which is boarding school. And then we found that 40% of the students fell out. Of those that went to secondary school, about 25% also fell out before they go to final year. So it was horrendous, and more females fell out more than the males anyway. So on the basis of that, we introduced free senior high school as an example. I believe this was a low-hanging fruit for me to demonstrate that the education reform would work, based upon the tenets of access, where everybody qualified to go would go, irrespective of financial background. Equity, those who went to the poor state schools in the junior high school will get the chance of coming to some of the best senior high schools. All the best senior high schools were public schools anyway. And quality. So the constraint I faced at that time was inadequate infrastructure, all the things that I've said before. In country, we have had 60 years of an experiment where the north part of the country had some sort of scholarship, because at the time of independence, the northern part of the country didn't want to have independence because they thought they were least developed and they needed time with the colonial masters to develop further. But anyway, it was granted. And when it was granted, the first president instituted a scholarship scheme from people for the north. Because all over the north, a huge area, about 50% of the landmass of Ghana, had only one secondary school. And that was even built up to independence. So everybody, and so we started supporting the northern part of Ghana with free secondary education. It was not totally free. It was a form of a capitation or partial scholarship. At a particular time, we have had subsidized feeding grants for some students in school. We've had cocoa board scholarship for farmers' children. Government also gave some merit scholarships to some brilliant students whose parents couldn't afford. And also we started introducing a progressively free secondary education program for these students. But this was not still solving the problem. So the objects of the free senior high school was based upon this: access, equity, quality, infrastructure development, and skills development, the five things. Free senior high school was removing all cost barriers for the child. It was going to create an equal opportunity for all. We were going to improve the quality of teaching and learning by supporting the teachers and supporting the students. We were going to expand infrastructure, and we put out over 1,000+ buildings in any way in those 4 years. And we're going to ensure that there was also acquisition of skills and a preparation for the job market. This is what I was talking about as in the Norton Scholarship, the parts of the country that had scholarship for 60 years before we introduced free senior high school. Between 2012-2013 academic year and 2015 and 2016 academic year, 4 years, the number of people who registered in the north for secondary education was that. Those who were qualified. Those who from junior high school, these are the numbers going to senior high school. But for those who passed the exams, we are able to place only 98,000 out of the 109,000 who were qualified to go to senior high school. For those we placed in schools, only 81,611 enrolled. So we have moved from 109 qualified to go to 81. Those we placed but couldn't go were 16,000, meaning about 60.8% were placed in schools, but they could never afford to go. Over the 4 years, averagely 11.5% of the students who actually qualified to go to school from the north, who had some form of assistance through some form of bursary or scholarship, 11.5% or 12% couldn't get a place, couldn't go. So we had to find the reasons for that. But when you come to the southern part of the country, where they had no assistance, between 2012 and 2016, 4 years, 35% averagely, 35% of the students who qualified to go could not go. 35. Nearly 100,000 students from the South a year could not go to school because one reason or the other, financial or nobody to support. That is what we call human wastage. Because it's not because they failed their exams, but it's just because of the other, they couldn't go to school. What happened when we introduced free senior high school? So these are the enrollments from 2013, and we introduced the senior high school in 2017. If you look at the dropout rates, 25.7, so by 2019, we had come down to 6.4. So if for nothing, it tells you the human wastage we've stopped. So 15-year-olds, about 100,000 a year, who qualified to go to school but couldn't go because of mostly financial reasons. We had managed to move it from around 35% in the South or 11% in the North, averagely 25%, to 6.4. So more than 100,000 more students per year were now in senior high school. So we show the diagram in another way. Totally, before free senior high school, for the 2014 to 2016, there were 881,600 students in school. This is not even counting those who would drop out. In free senior high school, where they're staying in schools about 100%, we had moved the school population from 881,600 to 1,200,580, nearly a 36% jump. When this 36% jump happened, it happened very, very rapidly. Because when you go back, you realize that 2017, when we started, there were 468,000 students. 2018, it had jumped to 521,000, and 2019 is 512,000. The huge jump was because people who had passed and who couldn't go all wanted to come back to school now. So we had to even devise a means to stop all of them from coming to school. Because then everybody had a qualification, everybody had. So we decided to implement what we said. If you fail, you go back to your junior high school for free for another year and repeat the year so that you get better results before you come. The 36% jump. This meant that when we got to second year, we didn't have classrooms or tables or chairs or beds for the children. A huge challenge because we couldn't build as quickly to absorb all those people. And then the press started. If you don't have money, why do you start it? So we introduced another information that I'll talk to you about very soon. We had a 30% equity policy, like I said, from those who went to the poor schools, poor rural schools, who managed to pass, but not enough for some of our best schools. We still made 30% of the places available for them anyway, because they were made from a state school to a state school. In primary schools in Ghana, it's become a private for the rich and the famous and the elite. They take all their children to private schools from kindergarten to primary, junior high school. And they get the best results and they come and fill all state places in the secondary school because all the good secondary schools were state schools. So we had to intervene to say, hey, hold on. Let's reserve some places, and we started with the meager 30%. But you realize that by 2019, for those kids who went to state schools who passed on their own, apart from those who were also making room, we had achieved over 58% or 56% places for those who had gone to public schools back into the secondary system. So it meant that. So this is to show the difference between equality, equity, and things like that. So when that 36% happened, this is the intervention we did. We called it sweating the assets before we could build. So we had to change the trimester into a semester and increase the contact hours, but give more time for students to play. So the double track system, we realized that in 2018, when the 36% jump, There were 277,537 students who were leaving the schools, all the schools in Ghana. But we have 472,000 potential places or students to come and fill these places. So the gap, we had added capacity of 13,200 seats and 290,000 places available when you add the first two. But there was a gap. We had to find spaces for 181,993. We had no choice but to say, if you can't find places for them, it means pass no way. They've passed, but they have to go and stay home. And whose child was going to stay home at that time? Because we had created the opportunity and the access a year before. So that's why we brought in the double track, where simply it meant that we had to change things around to be able to do 2 admissions virtually in 1 year. Schools coming up in different times. That's what we call the double track. So we had different colors for different tracks, yellow and green. We didn't say track 1 and track 2 because in people's mind it might meant that if you went to track 1 you were better, if you went to track 2 you were worse. I couldn't say track A or track B. I couldn't say anything but use colors, and I used the national colors. Gold, which is everybody loves gold. Green, which is fertility and fertile land. So I didn't have a problem. But even the colors were chosen with a thought, so that we don't create a second class within what we're trying to do. So the objectives of the calendar was to create room, increase enrollment, to reduce the class sizes, because now if the school normal capacity is 900, by splitting it, we could do 600, 600 and still create room, right? So that's what we did. And we increased contact hours in a year from 1,080 to 1,134 in the same time. And we increased the number of holidays. We did all that because we changed the calendar, the school timetable. So when the school started at 9, we brought it to 8 or sometimes 7:30 to about 3. So we had more hours in the day because they were in the secondary school and more number of weeks. So this just talks about the number of schools out there, the total number that were single track schools or double track schools. Not all schools were double track schools. It's the schools that the kids in Ghana, from junior high school to senior high school, you don't go to your community senior high school. You go to the school that you prefer. Simple reason. The best schools were in the south. So if you said everybody should go to this community school, there were tons of parts of the country that were very bad and poor schools. So we created the access for, no matter where you went to your junior high school, you could go anywhere for senior high school. That is why we still maintain the boarding system. And other interventions we did to support just the absorption of the fees were included. We trained all math and science teachers. We provided all core textbooks for students. We trained other core subject teachers. We gave intervention grants to teachers. We gave money to teachers that the poor students who have come, give them extra tuition, and we're going to pay you. We did that for the teachers. We supported low-performing schools with other incentives. We made sure that releases to the schools were very timeless. We provided past questions with chief examiners' reports to students, because you can just imagine some people have come from very poor background. They have no access to past questions. The rich ones were studying with past questions and knowing the critical areas they were studying. But we provided for everybody, every student. In fact, we gave them of past questions for about 10 years, so that all the questions and the answers as required, so that they could use for the revision. Then when they got to final year, when our first intake got to final year, then COVID hit. They had to stay home for 5 months before their exams, where there was no teaching. But at that time, we had already started a program called iBox, where all the courses and the subjects and the topics were taught by good teachers that were recorded and put on the iBox, where we even had virtual laboratories for chemistry, physics, and biology that was loaded. What I did was to summon all the telecom companies into my office to tell them, in such a crisis, we want you to load all the materials we have for secondary school and let it be available for free, which they agreed. So for secondary school, they all had, eventually all those in secondary schools had access to mobile phones and things. They could still continue studies without teachers. And also we started, the Ghana Authority started an online program giving free access to students. We did it for other schools, other levels of education, but I'm talking about secondary schools. When they finally went to school, they had their exams. And the whole country was waiting for poor results because they had been bastardized, they've been talked about for years. The free SHS couldn't happen. There's no money, there's no material. So for 3 years, I lost my hair, right? It's coming back now. I couldn't see. But the first cohort wrote their exams for 2020. And the second cohort, the double track cohort, wrote their exit exam. This time, this exit exam is a West Africa-based exam. It's not only Ghana. If it was Ghana, people would have said we have fudged the results. But this one, it was across West Africa. Okay. Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Gambia. And for the first time, we just put this record in so many of years. We see that the first time we got 50% pass mark for all the students who sat the exams into university, because this is a university entrance exams, was in 2020, the first cohort of free senior high school. So 52% passed all 4 core subjects, meaning they passed all the requirements to gain entrance into university. And that was the first time. And that was the largest population of students that had ever written the exams. So 50%, even at that time, was nearly 200,000 students. So before that exam, the universities had started complaining about where do we put all the students. The universities are admitting 45,000 now. They are coming in loads. But we will talk about this sometime later, what we did with the universities. And the second cohort, that people even maligned worse than the first one because they said a double track. Why? Is it a school shift system that has come back? And the elite was the one who were complaining because they had to stay with they had to look after their children in the home even longer hours. I had to come and tell parents that they should all go and thank teachers because teachers have been looking after their kids for them for so long a time in the country. But then again, interesting, when the double track results came, so for candidates qualifying for university entry, after 3 years of free senior high school, the first 2 products that are coming out, 2020 and 2021, you see that 52%, that's the smallest, meaning all of them passed, 50%. When you got to 2021, we improved the rate from 52 to 54. So it meant that the experiment was yielding positive results. And all those naysayers, I've not heard them. Even I'm not in education, so I don't hear what they're saying now. But we have the last batch that is also coming up of my tenure as education. And because of the human flourishing aspect, I just brought about 3 videos of students who were talking. And I'll tell you where this student is very soon.
I was 14 years by then. So since then, when I had my first child, I was having this desire to go back to school. But because of financial constraint, I was hawking to provide for myself and for my child. So I decided I would go back to school. So as I was preparing, I got pregnant again because I was staying with a man. So I had to drop that desire again and start all over. But along the line, I had the desire that I wanted to go back to school. And unfortunately, I got pregnant the 3rd one. Yes. But after that, I decided I would go to school. So I left the man and I started my life. From there, I started selling to provide for myself and the children. And many people were advising me that I was brilliant, that I should go back to school. So I took the bold step and I went to so-called the Bogame MAGHS Form 2. That was 2018. And in 2019, I wrote my BEC and I passed. I was admitted in Maoli School, which was last year. I want to thank the government. I know it's not only me that is going through this, and because of the free SHS, I've come back to school. There are a lot out there. To me, it is a good thing. It is a good thing. And I thank the government. I want to become a midwife. It's 14 years.
My senior brother who completed JHS last 3 years was not able to come to the senior high school due to financial difficulties. So when I got to the JHS, it became a psychological problem to me. But with the help of USHS, I am in the senior high school furthering my education. So I am urging the government that 2020-2021 budget will pass and pass massively so that he can continue with the policy of free SHS. My name is Anyakwa Rubin, a beneficiary of free SHS in Kede Senior High Technical School, and I want to become a military man in future so that I will serve my country and serve it well.
My name is Safam Adagbe, and I came from Gayek Basic School in Accra. For the past 3 years, I have benefited from the free senior high school program, and I am currently the Senior Girls Prefect of Infantiman Girls Senior High School. I would like to be a computer engineer in future to develop softwares and other applications that will help solve humanitarian problems in Ghana.
My name is Edna Natete, a former student of Kotobabi No. 2 TMVJHS. I benefited from the 30% free SHS FPC policy for public school. Currently, I'm the Deputy Head Prefect Domestic of Infantiman Girls Senior High School. It is my joy to become a journalist. This is because I would love to unearth the hidden truth of Ghana.
I am Edith Eyuam Ajifiaju from Obuasi, a student of Infantiman Girls Senior High School, where I am the protocol prefect. For the past 3 years, I have benefited from the free SHS policy. I want to become a medical doctor in future in order to help improve the medical sector in Ghana.
Thank you.
I was just going to say that what we'll do is we'll just group questions, 2 or 3 questions at a time, and let the Minister respond to that. While you're collecting your thoughts and thinking of a question, if I could just make a few remarks. I mean, obviously the policy on pre-secondary education has been a lot written about, including some, certainly former doctoral student of mine, and it has become very much discussed in the literature, and you can see the impact and the results of that, which you've heard firsthand from Matthew. So really many congratulations on your achievement. I know also that much of the literature leads us to believe that actually access is an indicator to development in education. Is a little by and by. What we really want to ask the question: if more children are in school, are they actually learning more? Which is where the literature is sort of pointing us to. But I would sort of urge people, certainly from tonight's presentation, not to take for granted the enormous effort that access to education, particularly secondary education, the work that you've seen tonight, what the effort that is required, particularly because I'm sure that if we ask the question in primary education, access versus quality, then it's quite right that we ask Are they learning more, and are they learning enough, and are they learning fast enough? But the bottlenecks to secondary education have been absolutely profound, and particularly when it comes to girls going into secondary education. So access to senior secondary education remains in many countries an elusive ideal. It's clearly not one that has been achieved, and one that is really, really important. My question, Lucy, if I may, is I thought, not only are you gone absolutely brilliant in everything you do, but some of the statistics, I thought, you're a magician. How do you create a double track system, increase school holidays, more time on task and learning? And I think there was you had an answer in the sense that you might have increased the school days, or the amount of time spent in school. And I think you did address some of my concerns about what parents think about, we'll have to keep them at home in the morning and send them in the afternoon. And there have been many attempts, of course, in many parts of Africa to sweat assets to do double track or double shift, double session. A lot of it has been derided, and certainly much of the literature shows that it reduces time on task and learning time, but we seem to have managed that. But you may want to make another comment or two. And I suppose just the last question was, of course, we've seen the data on the percentage increases in those now. I mean, I was very struck by the data, obviously, on the gap between those who did everything who were entitled to a school place, but of course couldn't get a school place just because there wasn't enough facilities, and so the double track system, as you said, was the kind of policy answer to that. The one question I had possibly about results is, and whether that was shown in the WIAC exams system. I was really intrigued by this point of the 30% equity time. So many of you, I suppose, also, it wouldn't have been lost in you the fact that, and Peter will probably talk to us a bit about that, I'm sure, but it wouldn't be lost on you the fact that you can take kids out of state primary schools, put them into state schools, put them into private schools for whatever reason. Many parts of Africa have shown that senior secondary public schools or state schools actually outperform many low-cost private schools on the whole. So what seems to have been the case in Ghana is that parents gamed the system. They took their kids out, put them into private schools, and in primary, and when they were eligible to go to senior secondary school, they pushed them back into the state sector, where achievements were high. So from what I understood of the data, you said, well, 30% will make places available to ensure that kids who stayed in the state system all the way throughout aren't left out or left behind or places taken. What I've been interested to know is whether the achievement of the 30% of all the years in state school, from primary through to secondary, was perhaps as good or better than those who had the kind of dual exposure of private and state. And indeed, if you do the good WIAC results, depend in a sense on the 70% of those who have had private exposure, or is it the state effort? So these might be difficult questions if you don't have the data for that.
I'll attempt. I'll start from the 30%. I spoke about 30% equity from public junior high schools. across the 55 top secondary schools. So not all the 722 were. And this is how we did it. First, we ranked the 70% places on all the admissions applicants that have come. So we found out that some of the junior high schools had brilliant students who are qualified on their own. So even though we wanted to achieve 30%, in the first year, when they went to school and we calculated those from public junior high schools, they were 45%. Right? So we blocked the 30. But before we hit the 30, everybody had chosen the school that they wanted. And we ranked based on merit and scores to get into the school. So of the 70% that went, some were from public junior high schools as well.
Okay.
So after that, after we achieved the 70, then we come around only those from public junior high schools who have qualified but don't have the high grades to have gone in and give them the 30%. So we realized that we got from 45% to 49.7 to 56. Really, we started noticing the gaming between 2018 and 2019 when some parents took their children from their private junior high schools and went to some public junior high schools and enrolled them in the last year just to write the exams. we noticed, but that is for another day how we deal with that. But this is how we solve that problem. When you come to the double track, like I said, we had 181,000 students to place. We had only 277,500. So what we did was we moved from trimester to semester. And the semester was 16 weeks. And we moved because, first, we wanted the spaces such that we could run not a shift system in a sense. A shift system, they go from 8 to 12, and one counts from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. And a shift system can easily happen in a day school. But I said, in Ghana, it's a boarding school. So what we did was to rearrange the calendar. And they were doing class of only 6 hours a day. Most schools were doing 6 hours. So we brought them to 8 hours. It was 40 hours. So in a week, we gained 12 other hours, almost 2 days. More just in a week. And then we gave the extra motivation to the teachers to do a top-hour teaching for those who were weak, apart from all the textbooks and the revision material we gave the students. So it is not only getting them in the school for free. When we look at the basket of things that was part of it, even school uniforms and sports jerseys and school house cloths and school ties and all those things were provided. But by moving from 36 hours a week or 30 hours a week to 40 hours a week in changing the calendar, we gained 10 hours extra. And that cumulatively gave us this 1,131. And because we were running only 16 weeks, instead of 40 weeks in the trimester, now they're running 16 weeks. But 16 weeks, then you go on holiday for 1 month and 16 weeks. So they had a lot and lot and lot of holidays. And that is where the parents started complaining that the children are saying too much, and how can this be a good school? But when you really check the trimester, it was staggered. The first term was not equal to the second term, it was not equal to the third term. And when you calculate the cumulative holiday they had in that one, the long vacation itself was 3 months in the trimester system, before you have the Christmas break and the Easter break, as we call it back home. So it was not very much different, the trimester from this one. Now you had a chunk time, maybe 2 months, the child is at you, 2 months, the parents didn't like it at all. But it didn't affect the outcome. Actually, it goes to show that in education, all that matters is probably contact hours. There's another set proof to it. Yes, if all being equal, what had increased was the contact hours of the teachers that allowed them to perform. So even though they stayed home for 5 months, they have completed the curriculum to be able to go and write the exams. The other big thing that was happening was that back home, previously before we changed, students never went to the first term. They were embroiled in finding a school. So some went to school only 2 weeks in the first term. And the WAEC exam started in the first week of the second term of the final year. So they couldn't, in the final year, they didn't have 1 whole year to study. Second term, first week, then you do the external exam. So the whole of the second term is wasted. The whole of the third term is wasted. So when you effectively look at it, they were having a 6-term year school for a 9-term one. So reversing all that meant that the students were staying more and doing the curriculum to see. So we are going to continue to have good results. It can only get better. But this is our example of human flourishing from the human wastage of 100,000 students virtually every year to putting them in class, letting them stay. And when you ask the question, let me go there.
I think it's forward.
Forward.
No.
Okay. Sorry. This time trigger something.
No, forward.
You see, if you attribute the 72% are those who are going, then the result should be higher. So they cannot be that direct. Because we have 52% out with all the 4 passes. At least I'm using the lowest one as the weakest rate. And it's going to 52.5 threshold to 54 point something. So I believe it's a mixture. And when we've been to schools where the head teachers will tell us, this one came with one of the poorest results into our school, and she's a top student in the class, in the one of the best schools. So the performance of these students in these elite schools shut up the church leaders and parents. Imagine a school teacher telling me that, oh, now when it's break time, or when it's a big weekend for parents visit, our car parks are empty. You know what it means? We have brought too many poor children into our schools. Because when people go and visit their children over the weekend when they are allowed, the school car park was full because all the parents had cars. Now I'm being told by a head teacher who unfortunately happens to be one of the orders, none or something, telling me that there are too many poor children in her school. I don't know. But I think this is an experiment. The pleasure I gain from these results that are coming out, is that when I was leaving my job as a doctor, a surgeon in training, I felt that I could move from one person treatment to mass treatment. And this is one of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thank you. So I'm going to ask Alia and Tom whether you want to field questions and perhaps group them. So I'll leave it up to you. We've got 20 minutes or so.
Okay, we'll take your question at the moment. And would you like to take a question, please?
Thank you, Dr. Matthew. I'm a doctor myself from Sri Lanka. I worked for the NHS here and went back to Sri Lanka to hopefully make a change. And I'm fascinated by the changes you made because I did think of politics too. But I realized that I didn't have the mental strength to do that. So you're amazing and really brilliant in terms of the changes that you brought on. So I think you're really making a big impact out there. I continue to work as a psychiatrist. So in terms of education, this is one of my dreams as well in my home country. So in Sri Lanka, we have 99% literacy and everybody has free access to secondary high school. But one of the, looking back, my sort of view at the moment is that sometimes the majority of them are wasted in secondary high school because the key factor that you brought on in terms of outcomes. So here you've looked at outcomes in the sense of people entering school and more people qualifying and so on and so forth, and obviously getting qualifications in the core subjects you listed out there. But did you have any secondary outcomes? For instance, so in Sri Lanka, one of the major that, it's all about learning facts, and it's not about training the mind to think, as Einstein would say. So I feel that we lose out a lot, even though we're just pushing people into higher education, even up to university level, and we opened up places quite a lot for them. The outcomes are not what we expect because of, as you rightly said, the university is not having some degree of, it's just still objective-based education that is imparting some facts to a person, which is a mass test. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Thank you very much. The old curriculum, standard-based curriculum, was we had a phrase back home: chew, pour, pass, and forget. Route learning or rote learning, where you master the facts, you write the exams, and you forget. That's why we moved from that curriculum to an objective-based curriculum, from standards-based curriculum, where now we are expected to do certain things at a certain age group, where you are tracking the students and doing remediation and making sure you are doing external assessments to ensure that the child moving from P1 to P2 has gained the competencies and the skills that it is expected. And if not, what are you doing about it? So we gradually want to change that. Based upon the 21st century curriculum, the other thing, the soft issues that we are talking about, teamwork, we already changed how the children sit in class into groups instead of all like they are here, all facing professor from the hilltop telling us what to do to ensure that there's collaboration and teamwork. But that will percolate, that will feed through as we move from the standards-based curriculum to the common core curriculum before we go to the senior high school. The senior high school experiment that we've done is as it is. So by the time we finish the full gamut of curriculum, we hope that the children coming through will start having a change of mind from road-based. And I also said something that we changed polytechnics to technical universities, and I regret because the polytechnics were providing the minimum manpower that is still needed. So in building new technical and vocational centers, we are bringing back, we won't call it polytechnics, we'll call it Institute of Technology. And we want to move from technical vocational education to professionalization curriculum. It matters because technical vocational has suffered such a bad name for a very long time. But that is the skills that we need. And that are the places where there's easy employment. So somebody can get dual qualification, competency based in something, and academics also. So that's what we're doing.
Excellent answer, I think, on both counts. And just to add to what you mentioned, so I think, most OECD countries, and certainly quite a number of ambitious African countries, certainly Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, have all moved towards competency-based curricula. So that is a good and positive sign. But just, a slight tutoring on your question. Sometimes, it's I hear this all the time. Lots of the kids are oyster space and they don't have any critical thinking and can't do things and it's right. But actually, I think that question should be reflected on those who ask it, because I just don't think we have the tools or the technologies to know if you continue to persist with the examination questions or the sort of lesser ways of knowing, how exactly do we know what young people are capable of in collaborative and innovative and creative thinking if we don't set the activities and tasks that draw those skills out? I think we're poor at setting those tasks. So it's easy enough to say our kids can't do it. The proper question is, do we do enough to draw those skills, which are sometimes actually a lot of them innate and so on. So we've got to get the questions right as well as the possibilities for the answers.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. This is Untitled from the Comparative and International Education Pathway. I'm very fascinated to see the remarkable achievements under your leadership in the Ministry of Education in Ghana. So I have actually three questions. One is, how do you see these achievements to be sustained and continue under your successor? I have worked through my, my experience with many ministers in many different countries. Unfortunately, in many cases, when the inclination, a political inclination, to actually erase what was done by the predecessor and then take credit for what can be done by the incumbent minister, and then obviously the lack of institutional system results into some of the gains and achievements to be actually lost, or for the work to be repeated, and the investment to be sort of in general, for the work to be repeated. My second question is that on the learning loss due to COVID, most countries obviously have suffered from the learning loss, even some of the very developed countries, as a result of the closure of education institutions. In your presentation, if I noticed correctly, this wasn't the case in Ghana, or maybe not sort of in the same sort of volume of magnitude compared to many other countries. I just want to know how this was addressed and handled in Ghana. Third question.
Fourth.
Thank you. My last question is on the employability and what happens to these students who, have benefited from improved access to education. I am referring particularly to TVET. I fully agree with you. TVET obviously has a prestige and perception issue in many countries, and I just want to know how increasing the access to TVET education resulted into employability or more employability opportunities for the graduates. Thank you.
Thank you. So, when we come to the free senior high school, I want to start from the last going up and address the TVET issue. And at the fifth level in the senior high school is the acquisition of skills for employment. Many a time, students who are fully secondary school cannot even write a letter to convince anybody that it should be given even an attachment or employment, let alone the employable skills. These employability skills are not necessarily specific skills, but skills to demonstrate when you go for interviews that you can work as a team player, you can collaborate with people, you can dress properly, sometimes you can speak for people to understand, and it's all very important before you demonstrate actual knowledge of the area that you want to go. So the new curriculum emphasizes that of that training so that the child will get like IT skills. We want to start introducing IT from primary 4, so that coding from primary 4, so that it will help the kids. Because all secondary schools now are having computer laboratories, so we want to go down to providing a laboratory for even basic schools that the finance ministry is supporting us on that. But that is generally for general education. In our general education, there are schools in Ghana that are called secondary technical. And during my time in school, some of the best schools that took students to engineering were these secondary technical. There are about 4 or 5 of them that you ask any Ghanaian of my age or slightly lower will tell you whether you have Kufuribia Sectech or Suhum Sectech or Wastage Sectech or Takradit Sectech. They were taking the best students to the engineering faculties of the University of Science and Technology, which for a very long time was the only technology university. So to go and do mechanical engineering, civil engineering, they had to come from one of these schools because the schools emphasized both practical demonstration and theoretical knowledge in those schools. Now we've created a TVET service. If we go back. TVET. So after our 5-year strategic plan, we profiled the TVET institutions and we started putting in place. One, the curriculum was competency-based, demonstrate that you can fix a bulb or you can fix the car with smoke in the exhaust. It is not tell me what causes the smoke in the exhaust. Somebody has brought his car to your place and you said you have finished stage 1. When you finish stage 1, you should be able to diagnose and repair that car. That's what we mean by competency-based training. So that is what now all the technical and vocational schools are doing. And we are working with some of the Scottish bodies and some other international bodies to get the certification right. From hairdressing through to high-end mechanical engineering. So that's what we are trying to say. So we have upgraded all the technical universities, upgraded the national vocational tertiary institutions that does the lower to the middle ones. We've emphasized on competency grading. We are using the industry as an external assessor of the student. So that when the hotel industry tell us that they don't get people, this time the people who are doing tourism and hotel industry is that body that comes at the final year to come and examine the student and give you a pass because they are willing to employ you. So that is what we call somewhere inside. So we are even improving these state-of-art institutions we are doing per region too. That is where I say we are introducing the polytechnics. So that post-secondary, not everybody should go to university. Some people want to go and get some skills, they get a certification for that. And we are suffering so much in our oil industry, where you know that even undersea welding, we don't have people in Ghana who can do that. We've had to take people to Canada before I came to go and learn undersea welding. How many people can we take to Canada? But if we build an institution that can come and train and do the certification, I think it will help many more Ghanaians. So that's what we're trying to do. Let's not finish. He talked about COVID. Because of all these reforms that we were doing, but the year before COVID, we came to Educational Wealth Forum, EWF, and on the side of EWF, we started having meetings through British Council with Open University UK to establish Open University in Ghana. We're going to back up with the technical setups and then do it for all the universities, choosing 1 or 2 courses. Why? Because we wanted to democratize opportunity. We wanted many more people to go through the university system because we envisage that our reforms we are doing there will bring more people through that. So already we have started implementing bits and pieces of remote learning. I talked about we had iBoxes. iBoxes were put in schools such that schools don't have the teacher to teach, say, physics. The child will not be found wanted. Because on the iBox, we have some of the brilliant faculty teaching the topics in physics. So with little support from even a teaching assistant, that child can get through the physics. We had virtual laboratories. We have collaborated with Open University in developing already on the system. So when I got the telcos to deploy all, the children could do final year students who were getting into revision for exams could easily continue with their revision without loss of time. So that is why when we stayed home for 5 months, We didn't lose much. And we sold it for even the second years who stayed home for longer. They also passed even better than. The most interesting thing with the first cohort who came out, in the whole of West Africa, there were 465 students who got 8 straight A1s for all their 8 subjects, of which 4 are core and 4 are electives. 465 got 8 A1s. Of that 465, 88%, 411 were from Ghana. The first time, Nigeria, you have the population, you have the resources, you have the men and the women, but Ghana did better. And of the top three in the whole of West Africa for the first time. So it demonstrated really that probably we're fortunate that we were prepared already for such an eventuality and we could scale up immediately. The other was institutional realignment. If you look at one of the slides that I showed, we talked about institutional and regulatory and legal realignment. That is why we had to do nearly 15 pieces of legislation out of 21 that we had identified. It changed everything, and we brought the people along. Like we created this professional training institution, National Teaching Council, just like Ghana, a medical council here, or pharmacy council here, or something, so that they take charge of the professional development of teachers and licensing of teachers. So no longer would any school be able to admit anybody, and especially it happens in education. Lots of the teachers that we employ in the basic schools are unlicensed and untrained. So we are doing away with that. And that's why we coupled the 4-year degree with a 10-hour licensing exams. So we also started reform, and we did a whole inspection system together with the school inspectorates in the UK as a mentoring institution. That is why we did the circuit supervisors. We changed their name to school improvement officers, not like things like that. And we gave them the tools to work with after going through a specified training of when they go to the school. They should identify the gaps, not necessary for us to punish teachers or heads, but to improve the learning outcomes in those schools. So we try to carry out. My good friend here who has worked for 30 years in consultancy and education, working with different and everybody. Still, even though we're coming here, and I'm enjoying myself in energy ministry, I say, oh, you should have stayed two years longer. Of course, he has lived 30 years of his life, 40, 50 years of his life in educational consultancy. So it must be another 1 or 2 years. Basically because he thinks that what we were able to do in 4 years, 30 years or 40 years of his career, nobody has achieved that. But it is not me. I offer the leadership, but probably the team that I put together to be able to have handles in all the 5 levels. My assistant was supposed to bring some of our documents, the infrastructure we have done, the leadership and everything. We brought samples to share. So we hope that you try to avoid your first question. Politics is the only job that when you do well, you are sacked, or you are removed from that position. And when you do poorly, you are removed. So I only have to have a record of what I did, so that people would learn and try and copy.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Do we, Peter, are you staying for supper? Are you staying for supper? You're all invited. Are you staying for supper? Brooks, are you staying for supper? You want to ask a question?
So someone needs to be ability to ask questions.
So, your work is not finished. We like to send you home exhausted. We'll be inviting everyone to dinner now, and we'll take some food through. We have a room, and we'll hopefully field a few more questions just informally. But for anyone not coming to, we literally 30 seconds and 30 seconds and literally a 1 or 2 minute answer, because 7 o'clock they'll shut the hall. So
Oh, I can go first.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So because the time has cut my appreciation to the question. I'm Ethan from China. So I was really impressed by the SHS initiative, how it's promoting equity and inclusivity. Because in China, the great issue in secondary primary education is the gender inequality. So and a lot of that disparity is caused by cultural issues, misogyny, patriarchy. I was wondering, in your experience, how do you use policy as a means to combat that kind of cultural forces?
Thank you. Brooke, 30 seconds.
You've had an amazing achievement when it comes to, I think the input side of what you're doing, and you're doing all the right things. My concern is around outcomes, and when you think about systems and planning, do you think about, with all the inputs that you're putting in and the training and so on, where the blockages will be in the system in order for you to achieve your objectives? And that's where a lot of these ideas fall to the ground. It is not coming up with the ideas, not coming up with the various inputs to improve education, but it's identifying where the blockages are and trying to make sure those are dealt with before rather than after.
Two quick ones. I think secondary education in Ghana, because you're late, I'll repeat it, is a boarding school education. And the exit exam or the placement exam will both happen at your community level whilst you're at home doing your junior high school year 50. So when you pass your exam, you go to any of the best schools in the country. And you get transplanted from your small communities to a larger horizon. So that has been going on for 60 years. So it solves it answers most of the problems that you have. Because we realize that if you stop the dropouts by offering the spaces, girls are coming as well as boys. We saw some of the girls speaking about their achievements. We saw those who were crying because of, even though they had pregnancy and they had children. Because in most places, when you have the child, you are ostracized. You can't come back to school. We have programs to bring back the girl child and support the girl child who's had a childbirth throughout. Your question, Brooks, is related to the question I tried to avoid. So that's why I'm not an expert, because it's like some of you here, I'm privileged not to be. I'm judged every 4 years, and my sustainability is that I come back to Parliament every 4 years. And I hope my party is in power to give me a ministerial job. So, but the work that I did, the party took it to elections. And by and large, we won 2020 elections on free senior high school. For 12 years, it has been the clarion call of my party. In fact, in 2012, there were 47 adverts against free senior high school. 47. But when we came in 2016, the whole country thought we couldn't do it, and we achieved it in 7 months. All this work, getting people to start free senior high school, was done in 7 months. So I doff my hat to the team that I met, the team that I put together to help me do the various facets of it and continue to plow through for 4 years. But it was 4 years when I lost my hair, because it was far longer than this. And I've since been losing it. But now I'm happy where I am. And I'm happy achieving other things, like access to electricity and a host of other things we can talk about later. Some of these questions I can never answer. Because educational ministers, between 2001 and 2016, there were 8 educational ministers, meaning maximum of 2 years, right? And that is a headache for prime ministers and presidents, because nobody then can do any policy issue. And of that 16 years, 1 had stayed for 4 years, so 7 had stayed for probably 12 years. 1 year, 6 months or something. And I also stayed for 4 years. Hopefully, my one who is there now will also stay for 4 years. And hopefully he should do better than me. In politics, you can't do.
So thank you very much. I'm going to just to say, extend an invitation to all of you here. Please join us for supper. Go. The VP is sitting at the top there. Follow her and run as fast as you can. Grab a tray. Go through servery. You can choose a sort of 3-course meal. There'll be wine on. Find yourself a chair and tuck in, and so that's great. And may we put hands together in the usual way.